Okay, hi everybody. This is Linda, and I'm joined by Connie, and we're here for our little weekly chat, which we really enjoy. And today we are talking about how we give our power away, and it's an interesting topic because there are many ways we give our power away all the time, which you might not even think about. In fact, before we went live here, I was just kind of making a few notes, just of things that popped in my mind. So let me just share a few of those with you. So every time you look for someone else's approval, you're giving your power away to that person. If you say no when you really want to say yes, or you say yes when you really want to say no, we all do that, right? You're actually giving your power away. When somebody else has the ability to upset you, you have given that person power over you. When you're looking for answers outside yourself, or you're looking for someone else to tell you what to do, to give you all the answers, you're denying the fact that you actually have that power within you. If you find that you try to prove yourself to other people, that's giving your power away. You don't need to prove or justify yourself to anyone. Tolerating toxic relationships. That's a really common way that we give our power away. If you hold back in any way because you're afraid of upsetting someone, or you don't want to outshine someone, then you're giving your power away again to that person. Anytime you really don't believe in yourself or accept yourself, you're just giving your power away. And of course, one thing that Conny and I talk about a lot is if you have a very cluttered environment, because we can give our power away to our stuff, letting it control us instead of us controlling it. There's a really nice quote that I found I wanted to read to you, which I think sums it up. And it says, you give your power away when you make someone or something outside of you more important than what is inside of you. So what do you think about that, Connie? Let's have a chat about that.
Well, so first of all, I want to say it sounds like we all do it.
We all do it, yes.
Because also, and I think I said that on another live once before, is also because we are a little conditioned and socialized to do this, especially as women. We're kind of socialized, or at least I was, to be polite and helpful and not be selfish. And so a lot of the things that you said is, of course, we're all kind of struggling with it because we're socialized this way. And it's sometimes hard to get out of it because the environment tells you right away how you're now.
Yeah.
Like, especially with toxic relationships, or when you're saying yes instead of no, and no would be the right answer. And you may become brave enough to say no one day because you're like thinking, oh, I really, it's no. And then you get right away the backlash of how dare you are so selfish, or how dare you say no. And, so
well, that's an interesting thing, because I was one of those people who really had a hard time saying no. And I was always afraid people were going to be mad at me. I was letting people down, all of those kinds of things. And I still remember to this day the very first time I actually said no. I was in my 20s, and it was in a work situation. I worked for a number of engineers. And because I was so accommodating and nice and never wanted to let anybody down, they just kind of piled stuff onto me. And there was one particular time everybody was going out for lunch to celebrate someone's birthday or something like that. And I came to my desk. It was just before we were about to go. And there was a big pile of stuff on my desk that one of the engineers had left. And he said, I need you to get this done by a certain time, which basically meant that I wasn't going to be able to go. And it was that breaking point, I suppose. And I wrote him a note and I put it on his desk, and I said, no, I'll do it when I get back from the lunch. And I went to the lunch, and I can remember being terrified. I thought I was going to get fired. I thought my boss was going to be really mad at me. I thought the world was going to fall apart. And when I got back to the office, my boss called me in, and I thought, okay, this is it. Fired. And he looked at me, he said, well, it's about time. And I said, what? He said, you let people take advantage of you too much. He said, I'm glad you said no. And I've had so many examples like that where I started saying no and being able to do that. The world didn't fall apart. People didn't get upset with me. Usually what happens is people say, okay. And it was such a big shock to me. So we think that this is going to happen. And sometimes it might. Somebody might be upset with you. But most of the time, actually, they're really not.
I have a similar story, but mine went different. So it was also in my 20s, and I was working in finance, in accounting, and somehow the CEO's assistant was sick. And like, good, that was now 30 years ago, but what is the next best thing? So if the secretary from the CEO is sick, you just find the next woman to serve the CEO tea. And somehow I was in their spotlight. So they came to me, and I worked in finance as a financial advisor, and said I needed to go and serve the CEO tea. And I said, no. That is not my job. I'm in finance here. And they got quite upset. How dare you say no? We tell you to go. Like, my boss told me I had to go and serve the CEO tea. And I said, I'm sure there is some other assistant or secretary here that knows these things. I'm in finance. I'm not doing this. And they got so upset. And then I said, and then they basically said, Connie, this is not you're disobedient. You need to follow. And I said, no, I'm not doing this. This is not in my work description. And so I was worried too. I get fired now, for being this way. And I said, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. This is not. And they said, oh, is it below your dignity or whatever? I said, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's just, this is not my job. I'm not doing this.
And so they were upset with you, but you didn't get fired.
I didn't get fired, but I had the reputation of being a tough cookie.
Good.
With me. But this is kind of what I'm saying. Like, if there was actually a guy who was, if we want to talk hierarchy, he was below me in hierarchy, which I don't believe in hierarchy, but he was below in hierarchy. And I actually said, why don't you send him? Because he was technically was just a trainee kind of intern, but he was a guy. So we are not going to ask a man. So I even said, I'm not doing it because you're just asking me because I'm a woman. He could go. No, he doesn't. So that's why I got the message of being a tough cookie. And sometimes you have to live with this. And I have it so much easier to live with this in a professional environment compared to a private environment. Just I'm not just a tough cookie. It actually did bother me a lot, but I'm like, I'm not doing it. And it's not about me not wanting, like me feeling above to serve somebody tea. I just felt like this is not my job. And I'm only asked because I'm a woman. So
Right. No, it's true.
But I didn't get fired. And I had a lot of respect from a lot of people afterwards. They never asked me anything silly like this.
Well, I bet you did. I mean, that's wonderful. But it's a great example of the expectations people have, and how we tend to go along with them, like I used to. I wish I'd been able to say no, like that from an early age. But people, and that is something that I have learned. People have so much more respect for you when you are honest, when you say no to something, or when you say yes to something that is really right for you. And it's really just about, it's about, again, self-awareness. We always talk about that, but it comes down to that, and knowing what's right for you, what's affecting you though, and how it's affecting you, because you can't identify that you're giving your power away unless you become aware of where, when, and how you do that, right? And let's jump for a moment to something like a cluttered environment, because so many people, and I want to make this jump because we know that the environment is what's happening there is simply a reflection of what's going on with you. So you make changes there, and it helps you make changes personally. There are so many times when we give a lot of power to the things that we have without being aware of it, and those things actually end up controlling us. I remember one time when I was doing workshops on this kind of thing, and there was a man there was a woman in the workshop who was talking about her boyfriend. They were in their 40s, I guess, and she had told me that he had a collection. I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been cars, or little miniature cars or something like that, some kind of collection. And she just told me how he had to buy a bigger house. He lived on his own, but he bought a bigger house to accommodate his collection. And if that, okay, I understand people collecting things and that it's meaningful to them, but I thought that was a really good example of something where your things are controlling you, when you have to buy a bigger space just to accommodate your collection, or to accommodate anything, or when you're having a storage facility to hold on to the stuff that you never use, or all that kind of thing. So that's why I wanted to make that jump, because it is a reflection of something much deeper.
And in my experience, it's like, and we say this a lot often too, no, it's not necessarily about the things, it's just what we make the things mean. And right. I would argue now, if somebody actually is collecting things, and it's not ideal if you have to buy a bigger house, but at least to me, I have a lot of people who come to me and say, oh, you probably make me give away my beloved collection. And I actually am not, because I always feel like if somebody collects something, it might not be ideal. You give maybe your power away, but at least it's something that you love. Mm-hmm. What I find even more sad is when people keep things that actually they don't like, and they keep because they think they need to, like things from people who passed, things from people they got as gifts and they don't like, So that is more devastating. So no, collecting can take completely over your life. It might not be ideal, but I always feel like at least you have pleasure with it, And
it's true. I always like to ask, okay, you've got a collection, that's great. What are you collecting and why are you collecting it? Just to really help people understand their own reasons for why they're collecting it. And in his case, we discovered that when so his mother had died when he was a young boy, and he started collecting these things after she died. Mm-hmm. So it was more related to that and sort of a grieving, part of the grieving process than it was to anything else. Yeah. Not saying that's wrong, not saying that's bad, not saying he has to get rid of them all. But what I am saying it's really helpful to understand that and know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Because in some way that's a sort of crutch for him.
Yeah, and it holds you back. It keeps you stuck, and especially if it is because, like, a lot of times people do this because they try to stay close to whoever passed. They try to stay connected, and they themselves don't really care about it. So then it's a different story again.
Yeah.
But it's always the awareness around why am I with almost anything. Why do I even have it in my life? Why is it here? What does it serve me, or does it more hinder and keep me stuck?
Yeah, I think awareness is key to everything. But if you can take it that step further and see whether how much power are you giving to these things. Again, I'll share another example. Was a lady that I worked with years and years ago, and I can't remember what she did for a job now, but she was really, really busy at work, so busy that sometimes she would bring work home. But she said because of her busyness at work, she wasn't able to do much in her home, and she she was really ashamed of her home. She had clutter everywhere. She said there wasn't a clear surface in the house, and it really made her feel bad. And so what she would try to do at the weekends is she would spend her weekends trying to sort things out and organize things. But she did this every weekend, really. And she was telling me how very often her husband would say to her, "Oh, come on, let's go away for the weekend, or let's go out and do this, or let's do that." And she would always say, "No, I can't. I've got to, I've got to try and clean up." And she never made any progress. It was always the same. And that is, I think, a really good example of how stuff can just take over. It can absolutely take over your life. And it just sucks all the enjoyment out of life. And this poor woman didn't feel she could ever just go and do something for fun because this was exerting so much control over her. So
and the other sad part is like every weekend she worked on it, but she didn't make any progress because she probably, what a lot of people do when they try to get a handle on it, they just using this pile and shuffle it over to this pile and then trying to organize. And like my mentor always said, you can't organize clutter. Because if it has no business in your life and you just don't want to face that fact, you can shovel it from here to here to here. It's still not making things better because it's still a heavy load on you. And and that's why you're not making progress. And it's
well, and that's an extreme case, obviously, and that's very overwhelming. And I think in a case like that, you would need some help. It's going to be very difficult to see progress from that on your own. But let's jump to so what can you do if you are giving your power away in any of the ways that I've talked about? What can you do about that? Well, I think, again, first and foremost, it all comes down to awareness. You've got to start paying attention and recognizing, okay, I am giving my power away to this person or to this stuff or to whatever it is. And once you are aware of it, then you have to ask yourself, and I think this is an important question, because when you ask this question, the answer isn't always yes. And the question is, am I willing to take my power back? Am I willing to stop giving my power away in this way? Because sometimes when you ask that question, you might actually realize that you're not willing yet. And it could be for many, many reasons. It could be because you're afraid of what might happen, just not ready to yet. So I think it's a good question to ask, because then at least maybe the answer is no. Then because if the answer is no, nothing you do is going to help you at that point, except for continued awareness. And at some point, when you are ready and willing to stop doing that or to let it go, that's when you can start to make some changes.
Yeah, I feel I totally agree with you, especially if it scares you. And a lot of people, they do give their power away because they're scared to take their power. We were often scared of our own power, no? But what I feel too is like you can get stuck in the awareness phase as well if you never move a little bit. So what I often suggest to my clients is then, like with clutter, but you can do this with any power taking back, is go very, very small. Where can you go where it's not so scary? So where can you take control over something? And it sounds silly to insist to have control over whatever, but just be like, a lot of times with people, for example, for eating, what are you eating? So take control there. Just because your husband or your significant other eats this and this doesn't mean you have to do too. You could take the control there. Or if that is too scary, then go even further or even smaller and just find little things that you can start taking your power back and build your, like I always say, like with decluttering, I always say you need to build your decluttering muscle. No, you can build your taking back power muscle by going very, very small, where it's not so scary. Where are you where you could take your power back and it's maybe a little bit scary, but you still really feel like, oh, okay, yeah, there I can do it. It's not that's so scary that I'm freezing while I'm doing it,
Well, if you think about it, there are many, many small ways that we give power away. Even something as simple as, I don't know, let's say your friend asks you out to lunch and asks you where you want to go. And perhaps your standard response is always, I don't mind, wherever you want to go. Well, maybe that's a small way that you could really ask yourself, okay, no, rather than deferring the decision making to somebody else, what if I actually thought about where I would really like to go or what kind of food I would really like to eat, and I allowed myself to share that. That's just a small thing, but that's an example of how frequently we do give our power away in large ways and small ways, So
and it can be, for the other person, can be very annoying when they say, okay, you pick, or like sometimes the sentence goes, you pick where we go, or where would you like to go? And the other person constantly deflects and says, oh, I don't care, wherever you want to go. Is sometimes for the other party, like if you're worried about upsetting the other person, you can upset the other person by
not making a decision.
And I don't, So this is a really good example, and it may be scary for you, but you could, if it's scary for you, why not then suggest maybe 2 places? You could then at least come with something and say, okay, I was thinking about this or this place, which one? And then you're still baby stepping yourself towards taking the power, but
exactly. Just even small things like that, just day-to-day things, ask yourself, where do I give others the responsibility for making decisions for me? Where do I allow other people to decide what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do it? And how could I change that just in small ways? And gradually, like you say, it's building the muscle. And as you do it, it just becomes easier and easier and easier. But the key to all of this, and I think it's a big missing piece for many people, is you have to know what you want. You have to know what you like. You have to know what's important to you. And that sounds very simple, but it's amazing how often people don't know what it is that they want, which is why they defer to other people so many times. So, maybe that's a good place to start.
They don't allow themselves even to tune in and figure out what they would like.
Yeah. And
it's that movie that comes to mind with Julia Roberts, where she eats the eggs always the way her boyfriend eats the eggs. I forgot the name of the movie, but that with every different boyfriend, she has a different preference of how to eat the eggs until she actually figures out how she herself likes her eggs. It's just a silly example, but that's exactly it. Because for some people, it might be even scary to ask themselves what they would really want.
It's really important, I think, to be able to connect with yourself in that way. And sometimes you don't know what you like or what you don't like until you try something. But it's like building a picture. It's building that picture of what's important to you, what you like. But the more you do that, instead of, like you said, instead of other people getting upset with you, I find that people really appreciate that, because now, just like you saying no to going to make the tea, right? Okay, yes, it upset them, but look how many people looked at you and thought, wow, she can do that, I can do that. It's inspiring, and people actually appreciate it, I find, far more when you have a clear idea of what you like and what's important to you, rather than just deferring.
And you can do it in a kind way. Like, I wasn't getting all bent out of shape to them or anything. I was just saying, no, I'm not doing it. It's not in my, and I mean, like, I kind of was almost willing to risk my job for it. But on the other hand, I was thinking, like, if they let me go for a silly thing like this, then you really have to question your value to the company, but it's not everybody has to go with such a risk right away.
It isn't. Well, and you also mentioned in the beginning, that it's easier to do it professionally than it is to do it personally.
For me, yes.
Well, no, I think it has been for me as well. I was just what came to mind to me then is when I moved to the US, and then we would go back to England to visit. I actually began to dread those visits because whenever we went back, we were completely taken over by everybody else. It's like, you're going to go here next, you're going to go there next. And we never did anything that we wanted to do. And I was always come back from those trips feeling completely exhausted. Until one year, I just said, you know what? I want to do some things that we want to do, and not just, do what everybody else wants us to do. Were noses put out of joint? Yes, they were a little bit. But again, like you said, I did it in a kind way. And I just started small. It's like, I really want to go and visit this, while we're here. I really want to do this. And I still did what other people wanted, but I made sure to include what I wanted. Yeah. And then gradually over time, now when I go, it's like, okay, I'm doing what I want to do. And we will make sure to visit, people who want to visit. But that wasn't an example of how I was giving my power away completely to everybody else. And it was hard to change it, but again, did it a little bit at a time. And
yeah.
Really
we can all do it. And I feel like I don't think we ever get 100% out of it. We will always find again somewhere where we give our power away. But the more we actually be aware of it and try to keep the power within us, the better, like you just said, the easier it gets. And also the less areas. And then these areas where we actually do give our power away might not be so significant. Or we can give with awareness, we can give the power away. You can say, yeah, I'm choosing to give power away here for whatever reason.
Yeah, you can always make that choice, but make it with awareness, Be conscious about it. Well, I think, we're coming to the end of our time, but I think really the keys are to start just becoming aware of where, when, how you might give your power away, and recognize, I think, that, one of the things we think is that we don't have control. I have to do this or I have to do that. You always have a choice, and you have more power and more control than you think you do. I mean, some things, yes, absolutely, you don't have any control over, but you start taking control of the things that you can control, and that's when things start to really change.
But oftentimes we're really thinking we have no control, and we do. Like my mentor always says is, you don't have to do anything other than breathing. You don't have to do and dying. We all have to die, and we have to breathe. And of course, if then people come and say, oh no, of course I have to, for example, if you have children, I have to feed my children. No, technically you don't have to, but of course, if you love your children, you choose to, you want to. And just this shift from I have to no, I don't have to. Nobody, like literally, I choose to, that gives your power back,
Well, I think even just one thing I've used is just reminding yourself as you're doing something, especially if you've had that thought, oh, I have to do this. Just to be saying to yourself, I'm doing this because I want to do this. I'm choosing to do this.
I'm choosing.
That's starting that shift of taking your power back, because you recognize that it is a choice and you're doing it because you want to. And that, I think, can really help to get you started on taking some power back. So awareness is the key, as we always say.
As always.
As always.
We always have changed that.
You can't change what you don't know, what you don't acknowledge, or you don't know what you don't know, is what a lot of people say. But anyway, so I encourage everybody, start thinking about how you might be giving your power away, and start little steps to take.
We could brainstorm in the comments below.
Yeah.
What are little things where you could start taking your power back?
Yes, absolutely. So let's all start taking our power back, and everybody will be happier actually when you do that ultimately.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Conny. Look forward to our next chat, and I don't know what the topic will be, but we'll think of something good.
Yeah, we will always do.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.